this level of barbarity. It is a people that historically have seen themselves in the values of Judaism, in which the Christian beliefs have come from. It is a model of love, of faith, and hope. It is a peace zone has two dimensions. So the first point, it is a peace zone because there is no war declaration between the state actors, and the second dimension of the peace zone is that it has an element of being the norm, and it is that it should continue being a peace zone. If we don't act in harmony with one another to deal with all of the world problems that we are facing today, we are going to have a terrible, terrible world. We have to set rules that are appropriate between ourselves for international commerce. We have to set rules in relationship of the financial system so that no country can weaponize the financial system to damage another country. We have to work together in the subject of climate change. That's why we are going to Belém in Brazil to try and move forward in the approach of humanity to deal with these problems that exist. We can solve the problem of the spread of nuclear weapons, but for that we need to reach an agreement. We cannot have and we cannot leave the subject of artificial intelligence. We have to deal with that, all of us together, because artificial intelligence will either govern us or we will govern artificial intelligence. Those are key subjects. We have to resist colonialism, neo-colonialism, and we have always done it. And up to this point, it hasn't been easy to beat it. It is in the human chest of this love for freedom and the resistance of men and women. These elements, no matter how powerful they are, they'll never think that those elemental virtues of the humanity that are in the heart of everyone and will never extinguish, and in all the opportunities historically, the powerfuls, the nations that hold the powers, have always crashed with these principles that are essential and are in the heart of each human being. And the leaders have to learn this, and they have to act like this. And I want to have one last comment. In the book of Chronicles, the leaders of the 12 tribes of Israel, there is a pen sketch of each one of them, and one of the least well-known of those 12 leaders of the 12 tribes of Israel is Issachar. And the book of Chronicles, it talks a lot on Issachar. He knew the times and he acted accordingly to the times. I call to know and understand this time that we are living today and act in conformity with the times that we have. These times, they're dangerous. Today, I am more worried on the possibility of a serious conflict in this hemisphere and in the world. I am more worried than I have been in the last 25 years since I have been the Prime Minister. I've been the Prime Minister since 2001 in a continuous matter. But don't worry yourself, there's elections. I'm not going to abdicate, and I have been Prime Minister because I have been elected. But I must say that I have never been as worried as I am today, and that is why, in the manner in which I'm speaking from my small country, because we want to be the proverbial part as well. Thank you very much. These were words of now comes citizen Nicolas Maduro, the constitutional president of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela for the 2025-2031 period. Well, good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon, as they say, right? My greetings to Papa Ralph, the Ralph Pope as he is called in English. A very special greeting.
The thunder has ceased as soon as Nicolas started to talk.
I realized that as soon as Nicolas started talking, it stopped raining. There's a lot of things that happen as soon as I start talking. My greetings, my very special greetings to the over 130 visitors, delegates, men and women of different institutions in defense of the rights, the human rights, and the rights of the people that have come to this seminar of 59 countries of Asia, Africa, Europe, Latin America, the Caribbean, and beyond. I thank the invitation that was done by the Vice President, the Foreign Minister Yvan Gil and his whole work team, and also this foreign ministry. My greetings to the ambassadors of our brother countries that are also here represented. This place, as you know, brings great memories. This house, called the Yellow House, by liberalism in the 19th century. This place, especially this place, was where colonialism, the Spanish colonialism, built its first building when they, by the force and through genocide and killings, they forced thousands of men and women who lived in a peaceful manner. Those were the first ships that came from the Caribbean. They arrived with the cross of the Catholic Church to massacre and to kill in the name of a religion superior for that time. It is the story of our lands here in this Yellow House, especially in this place here in the South Zone. All of that building was the original building. Here we have Samuel Moncada, who's the only one who can tell me I'm wrong, and the Professor Brito Garcia as well. This was the original building of the General Cavalry of Spain when Venezuela was designated as the general captain. Here is where the Spanish Empire settled their first roots of domination. When I was the foreign minister, I did an investigation, and to those places of the north corner, we managed a jail and a cemetery. The bones that we saw there were the remains of men and women of indigenous and also African slaves. So it means that it also worked as a government house and a jail and cemetery of torture. Then the rest of it was built. This building was also the witness of a historical fact that had no comparison. On Holy Week in 1810, it was boiling very deeply the public opinion of all of our Americas. Napoleon had invaded Spain, and there was a conflict in the empire, and in all of the Americas, a voice came out to look for our own path. On April 19 of 1810, in a balcony that's here precisely, and it looks to the cathedral and to what is today the Bolivar Plaza here in the center, the first block that was built in decolonized Caracas and exterminated. There, people, the mestizo people and the white who were born here, that were disguised, that they for liberation, and 19 of April of 1810, the first government junta that was autonomous was formed of what would later be the Republic of Venezuela. So this building has a lot of history within it. Then it was the government house all the way to 1904, when an earthquake took President Cipriano Castro, a dignity president, to move the government to where it is today, in the palace called the Palace of Miraflores, and it started in the 20th century to be also the house of the foreign ministry of the Republic. I was here a little bit over 6 years as the foreign minister of the Bolivarian diplomacy that was founded originally by the commander Hugo Rafael Chavez Fria, the giant of the 21st century. We know a lot about diplomacy, and we could paraphrase the Chavez of that 29th of February of 2004, when he declared the anti-imperialist character of the revolution, the Bolivarian revolution of the 21st century. So that's why we say there's a lot of diplomacy here, diplomacy for the peace, if peace is what is wanted, and we look for peace and diplomacy as well to face the new attempts of the imperialism to colonize our Americas, and to fight in whichever way we have to fight in the scenario we have to preserve the dignity and the right to life, peace, and the existence of our people. Ralph started talking, and then came what we here called torrential rains. There was lightning even, and Ralph continued talking, and the lightning came back. I believe that today, Ralph, starting the month of October, there is a phenomenon that in Venezuela we call, during these time of tropical waves, the Cordonazo of San Francisco, and that's what I believe is pouring down on Caracas and in Venezuela. So that lightning and that rain clean of any negativity the space of our beloved Venezuela. I celebrate
the making of this international conference that is looking into neocolonialism and the repercussions in the territory of the empires. A day like today, 126 years before, with the complicity of the empires, a negotiation took place of the arbitral that was absolutely null, that arbitral law that took place and had to do and was in sentence with that moment in which empires took the words, but Venezuela stood his ground firm, defending its land against the world. It was 1899, 126 years, exactly like that today. The Paris Agreement that was approved by the old and decadent and criminal British Empire and the greedy U.S. Empire that was just being born against a sacred land, a land that was blessed for many times and that had given birth for the liberators of our America, Venezuela, the Paris Agreement that resulted in a fraud, a scandal, and Venezuela considers it void and null for the centuries to come. It was a century, a complex century for a land, South America, that gave birth to a powerful movement of independence that was able to lead a war against much superior forces and much technical forces against century-old armies of great experience and technical combat techniques at the time, when on April 19th of 1810, Caracas joined the peace and joined Quito, Bogotá, Mexico, and then all the other former colonies declared their independence in the year 1810. Whoever were living in these lands, especially those that were called the white Creoles, but that were depicted by those that were whites from the peninsula and were looking down on them. We didn't have a people. The Inquisition was the main ideology, the darkness of a false Catholicism that had been shaped in order to be useful for imperial domination of the moment. We didn't have a people at the moment. We didn't have leaders at the moment. But we had a dream that was called independence, dignity. We didn't have a state, and we didn't know how a state could be made up. We didn't have an army. We just had a force, a spiritual force, that afterwards the liberator called, as Fidel used to recall, and Chavez used to recall, the sacred fire, Ralph, the sacred fire that burned in the souls, the collective souls of thousands and thousands of our Americans, that aspired only to dignity, equality, and that raised a word that represented all of those values, that was independence, republic, sovereignty. Those were the concepts. The historians say, and sometimes we need to believe historians, not always, Delcy. Sometimes we have to believe historians. Here is Celia, who is a lawyer, but she also likes history. Historians say that the impact was very high. The impact of the values and ideas of the French Revolution, freedom, equality, and fraternity, betrayed for centuries the Republic of France and the French Revolution that tried to be remembered in the Great Revolution of the Paris Commune. But the imperial elites were imposed on them regretfully on such a glorious process. The impact of that French Revolution, the impact of the revolution of North America, because we are talking about two revolutions in America. That one of North America against the British Empire, and then the revolution of South America from the Liberator's Army, from our peoples, against the decadent empire of Spain. Two American revolutions. We need to have those concepts very clear. The influence of the revolution of the United States of America that is about to turn 250 years and greatly impacted on our peoples, on our America, the idea of separating from the metropolis and building our own reality as Americans, locals from this side of the world. And then we had another revolution, but sometimes it is forgotten, for which a great people of the Caribbean, Ralph, a great people of the Caribbean has paid for over 200 years of punishments, of guilt, of tortures, of invasions, the great revolution, the Black Revolution of Haiti, the Great Revolution of Haiti. Our greetings and also our eternal commitment, historical commitment to that revolution and our brother people of Haiti. What a great debt we have with Haiti. We from South America, we Bolivarians. It had a great impact. In Venezuela, we had already seen a black insurrection over there in the lands. We knew it because one of the landowners had taken some of those people to Haiti, and they saw that power, the possibility of grasping power and military power. The impact of the Haiti Revolution that had the great army that conquered over and vanquished the French army with arms. We have studied too little the Haitian Revolution in the university, in the higher institutions of our countries. So I was saying that if we take as reference April 19th, 1810, July 5th, 1811, just 15 months has passed when the debate concluded, taking the patriots of then, pushed by a youngster called Simón Bolívar and a man, a universal man called Francisco de Miranda, to declare just a few meters away from here, to declare July 5th of 1811 the absolute independence of Venezuela from any empire existent at the moment in the world. And if we continue recounting all the trajectories, the defeats, the resurrections and victories, the defeat of the First Republic, the defeat of the Second Republic, and when Bolívar comes to the project again and manages to merge both armies from the east and the south, he installs the Constituent Congress in order to found what was later known as the Great Colombia. Just 9 years have passed when in the Orinoco River, in our Guyana, in our Guayana Esequiba, for which and with which our republic was born. Jorge had a debate here in the seminar. In 1819, just 9 years had passed since that April 19th, and less than 8 years since that July 5th, and we already had a people's army from freed slaves and original communities, whites, locals, mixed races, that were walking through, patrolling the territory and going to merge to that army, to the Great Colombia that was led by a great other leader, José Antonio Páez. Afterwards, the great deeds of the Páramo de Pipa and the freedom of Santa Fe de Bogotá, and afterwards the Battle of Boyacá, and what today is Colombia. Just 9 years exactly had passed since the declaration of the first autonomous government, and barely 8 years from that July 5th. And we had a transnational government that was in way to becoming a great state with a territory, a leader, an army, a popular army that was united for a South American destiny, for it never to forget that history, if we continue to go back to that history whenever we needed to, and see that deeds, what the Venezuelan people did, what the people of Venezuela, Colombia, Panama, Peru, Bolivia, what the people of South America did in that heroic moment when our republics were founded and our original project was founded, and that today our people will defend it with just and firmness, but if it needs to do it with arms, it will defend it with arms. The original project of a homeland that needs to be respected and will be respected on top of any circumstance.
Venezuela will never humiliate itself in the face of any empire, no matter the power that that empire holds, whatever the name of that empire is, and we will give them in its rightful measure a lecture, a moral one, ethical one, and political one to that empire in the years that are to come, in the years that will come. Our people, it's a people that's passive. It's very peaceful, very happy. We are so happy, Ralph, that we moved Christmas to an earlier date. Bring a coffee to both Ralph and I, please. Many people in the world wonder themselves if these people have gone crazy. They're moving Christmas to an earlier date. But if we are Christians, first of all, put that in the equation. We are Christians of Christ the liberator, of Christ the anti-imperialist, the one who walked barefoot with the fishermen, with the farmers, who hugged the ill, who came back to life, brought the humble back to life, the Christ of the poor, of the humble, not the false Christ that they want to sell, of supremacists, of the new Nazis, because Hitler as well brought out the sword, the missile, the shotgun, and the cannon, and he had a Catholic picture in the front. It is not the Christ of supremacists, it is the original Christ, the Christ, the deep one of the people who suffers, but it is also of the peoples who fight. It is the Christ that brought and was and went to bring the market people out of the temples. And what did he use for that? Probably Christ. He prayed before going inside the market, and I imagine that in his depth of the profundity of the connection he had with God, he prayed, but he brought the sellers of the market with a whip. So us, the people of Christ, we have moved Christmas forward, and it has been very good in the previous years in which we have also done this. The economics are activated, and our people are filled with the original spirit of that baby born in Palestine, of the Palestine baby, the baby Jesus who resists. So he also looks for Palestinian children. The Palestinian kid who was born in Belen and raised in Nazareth, and he was murdered in a mountain in Jerusalem, is the same Palestinian kid, Jesus, our Messiah, Ralph. That is why we call for his protection, his blessing. We invoke his spirit, his original spirit. Taking, if one said, what is the synonym of imperialism, we would have to say that it is supremacism. All of the empires have believed themselves to be superior to the rest of humanity. That is why I don't agree with part of your analysis. Are rather China and Russia, they are being born as superpowers without ambitions or imperial plans, or being supremacists over the rest of the world. All of empires have come from the same root, from supremacism. Religious, have to remember that Catholic supremacists of that time, they said that our indigenous people and our grandparents that they brought from Africa as slaves, they didn't have souls. It was a very long debate, a conceptual one. And then who decided in the Inquisition back there, they said that yes, indigenous people have soul, but not a human soul. They have the soul of a kid. They have to be treated as children. That was left in writing. And they said that our grandparents from Africa, they were not human beings. They didn't have souls. I believe, Yuri, our Vice Minister of Africa, I deeply believe that the elites of the West, they still think the same thing of Africa. They think that our African people don't have souls, spirits, and Africa is going to surprise them in the rest of the 21st century with their dignity, their wisdom, their spirituality, and their strength. If one says empire or imperialism, it's also saying supremacism. They're saying colonialism. They're saying history of slavery. siege, stealing of resources, the overexploitation of the working hand. In all other times, it is also talking about the dividing of the world. It is not a pope who set down a map and said, this belongs to the Spanish Empire and this belongs to the Empire of Portugal. How many stories could be brought to this seminar to validate these theses that say imperialism in each of the times and centuries is also the same as saying the division of the world, siege, colonialism, slavery, domination, war, and violence. And what hurts the supremacists of the North is that now it is irreversible, the process of the birth of a world that has many poles and has multiple centers, where imperial hegemony is ceasing and it's decaying until its disappearance. Unfortunately, Venezuela 126 years ago was in a situation of maximum weakness. We have analyzed when we had the referendum with consultations in December of 2023 and a national debate was said. Here we have Professor Pompeo Torrealba, who is a general of the Republic and now a deputy of the next National Assembly, and it is the biggest expert that Venezuela has in the study of almost 60 years of the historical subject of the taking of the Guayana Esequiba. Professor Pompeo was given to me by Commander Chavez when he named me foreign minister. It was one of the first decisions that were transmitted to me. He said, Nicolas, I will send my professor to you of the military academy, Pompeo Torrealba, so he teaches you all about Esequiba. He has to have an office next to you and next to me. He was, well, I was for 6 years and a half, so I have to thank him very much for everything that he taught to me. One has to look for people who know more than one does to teach oneself. We have to look for the knowledge in those who have it because of their trajectory, their studies, their experience, their wisdom. So I thank live all of the good people that has been on our side, Delcy, to design so many ways and answers. The truth is that after the Bolivarian situation, treason was imposed. The Great Colombia was destroyed, and where there should have been one only union of republics, that today would be a great power of our Americas. There were born a lot of republics that were divided and facing each other. Venezuela and Colombia were facing each other, and then Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, that was founded by the heroes, liberated of the domination of Pizarro, out of those beautiful, wonderful lands that were part of the Inca Empire, known in history as the Inca Empire. I don't agree with that. I think it's the Inca situation. Instead of one confederation, as Bolivar saw, before the birth of the Union, the USS in the 17, 18, 19 years, 100 years before, Bolivar talked on the necessity of building a great union of republics, a great nation of republics, a little like Russia is today, a federation. Here he talked about a union of republics, and instead of a union of republics being born with a powerful state and a powerful army and a project, a Republican project as the one that was talked about by the libertarian. Treason was imposed of territorialism against Bolivar. They killed Sucre, and when our libertarian died that December 17 of 1830, the Bolivarian history touched its most nefarious hour, its hardest hour. The rest of the 19th century of our Americas, and also Venezuelan, anti-Venezuelan one, was a war between the different ranks of the army. The armies of different people, and also the birth of new landowning classes was a new colonialism, as Bolivar called it, and he said it could come, and a new colonialism was imposed when, in the middle or the end of the 19th century, Venezuela was a country without a state, without an army, without people, and totally divided. 1899, what is done is to execute a taking of the land because of that division and the weakness that the homeland of Simón Bolívar was experiencing at the time. Probably if we had an analysis in which we compared Venezuela to the Latin American, we would find a similar situation in the rest of the continent. So the taking that was done in Paris, it was totally had no sense. It was an imperial taking, and then it was imposed what has been called in history the diplomacy of shotguns. That was the marine power, the technological superiority of the militaries of the canyons, and in the combat capacity. The European empires started to attack Venezuela that was weak, didn't have a union, they didn't have a state, they didn't have a government, and was surprised in 1902, an insurrection of a military character that was financed since London and defeated by Cipriano Castro, the president, who was here when he was coming back victorious of the Battle of the Victory of 1902. He found that all of the ports of Venezuela were blocked by 21 ships of the British Empire and of Germany, which later the reign of Italy also joined. The Germans that gave birth barely 2 decades later to Hitler, and the reign of Italy that was the creator of the monster Mussolini. They came in the diplomacy of the canyons, and they were threatening that Venezuela that was weak. What was the reaction of the people? Ralph, comrades, when it was known that December 9th of 1902, when it was turning 77 years of the great victory of the Battle of Ayacucho, which consolidated the independence of South America, what was the action of the people when the president Cipriano Castro launched a great proclamation in which he said a phrase that was then later left to all the times: the plant that is insolent of the foreigner has damaged the sacred soul of the homeland Venezuelan to the arms, and that was what happened. Look, Ralph, we didn't have an army. We almost didn't have any weapons. There was 21 warships that pretended to attack Venezuela. They had a plan, so the British took all of the petroleum areas in Zulia that were the best in the world. The Germans were claiming the island of Margarita, and the British were claiming the Essequibo Guayana, the Orinoco in its entirety. And what did the Venezuelan people do? The Venezuelan people got ready. There was no fear. There was no fear, and by the thousands, a people who was unarmed and didn't have an army, they brought out their knives, stones, old shotguns, their machetes, and they faced them in a way that was incredibly heroic, and they were able to contain the threats. They sunk several ships, and they obtained a very important victory for our history of that time. A heroic people. There's many manifestations of heroicy that people join together over the political differences as they're doing today. And there is a testimony that is very important of that time, when our first saint today of the next 19th of October in the Vatican, Pope Leon is going to give him his saint title of the Catholic Church. The doctor, San Jose Gregorio Hernandez, being a doctor of the people, a man of very deep Catholic and Christian vocation, calling a leader of the streets, of those people who are humble, that touches, that heals, that listens. Jose Gregorio Hernandez it was very close to here, to the Alta Gracia, in himself, and he said, I want my God to go and defend my homeland in the port of La Guaira. He is a saint with all of his strength. So all of the people, we have histories, beautiful stories to vindicate. All of the people, we have causes that are special, to which we have to fight without a doubt. Imperialism is supremacism, it is colonialism, it is siege, it is slavery. And today, when Venezuela is one of the countries in the region, among others, that is threatened by supremacism, by the war craziness, by violence, today, I say and I repeat, the dilemma is no longer homeland or death, no, because the independence doesn't have an alternative. Freedom doesn't have an alternative. Dignity and life in sovereignty don't have an alternative. Or is it an alternative to go back to go and be a colony of the United States? Or is it an alternative to be one more star and one more state associated with the empire? Or is it an alternative to put our heads down and be their slaves of the supremacists who despise us, who are following the Latin American and the African people in Chicago and Portland and New York, and they're kicking them in the streets? They're taking their children. Is that an alternative for us, to be a slave of them? Independence, freedom, dignity, and the republic don't have an alternative, because fight here is independence or colony, freedom of slavery or slavery. Those are the options. And it is very well known, as the libertarian said in 1818, answering to a letter of an ambassador who had the last name Irvin, who was sent to that time by the Washington government, because the United States always supported militarily the powers of that time, who were Spain, in the Orinoco, they have captured two Spanish ships that were full of weapons, of the best weapons of the time, two ships that were from the U.S. and was captured by Antonio José Sucre. Because our soldiers are very heroic, so they captured those two ships and they put down their weapons, and the weapons were distributed among the Libertarian Army that was being birthed in that moment and was in their way to Santa Fe, Bogota at the moment. And the two ships were, how could you say that in legal terms? They were seized in accordance to the Constitution and the law in the territory of the Republic. And from Washington, the government sent an envoy who had the name of Irving, and on that subject we have published a book that I recommend to yourself. I posted it in my social media to those of you who want to download it or like it. This book we currently have in Spanish. I'm not sure if we have it in English, but we probably do. And Bolivar received this ambassador Irving with diplomacy. With a lot of diplomacy, Bolivar received him. He gave him lunch. He received him 2 or more times until he realized that this man was an insolent person, an abuser. And he started to receive letters, and Irving started sending letters with ultimatums. And Bolivar answered to those letters in different ways, with a lot of highness, with a lot of quality in its literacy, in its spirit. He answered each one of his insolent communications by writing. And in one of his communications, he said, in reference to his threats that the United States was going to proceed against the Republic of Colombia that was at that time being born. And he said, by fortune, Mr. Irving, we have seen in the history of humanity a bunch of free men defeat powerful empires. Bolivar said it in 1818, and by fortune we saw a bunch of powerful free men with Bolivar at the face to defeat the most powerful empire in America. And by fortune, millions men and women in Venezuela have managed to contain and defeat all of the wars in its different shapes of the empire of the United States in each one of its parts. For this conference, I studied this book that I also recommend. I think that it's probably in English. I recommend teachers here. It is a work of Juan Bosch, one of the political leaders and intellectuals, the most brilliant in all of the Caribbean and all of Latin America. He is so brilliant that the United States gave him a coup d'etat in its time. So they gave him a condecoration for all the times. The great Juan Bosch. Right now, the Dominican Republic really needs a brave man like Juan Bosch, a president with the bravery, the patriotism, and the Latin American of Juan Bosch. He wrote a book in the year 1969 on Cristobal Colón, Christopher Columbus to Fidel Castro, the Caribbean, the imperial border, and here describes the story, the history since the moment the ships La Pinta, La Niña, and the Santa Maria came, and then he describes the different chapters of the invasion, the conquer and colonization and slavery of these lands that are today known as the Americas and known by the Aymara people as La Yala. This history, looking back, it has been long and intense, and I fully coincide with one of your conclusions, Ralph, that the story of humanity has been a history that is brilliant, that leaves us a patrimony of ideas, of just ideas for which we have to fight. But I believe very strongly that the history that we have seen that has been glorious will be small if compared to the glorious story that is being written and that will be written by humanity against all kind of imperialism, hegemony, or supremacism. I admire the beautiful images of the European people, the beautiful images we are receiving from Italy, and I send a greeting and a hug to the Italian people who are in the millions on the street defending the Palestinian people against the genocide in Gaza. I wish that the whole humanity follows the example of the people of Italia, who has said stop, like Che said, and it has started to walk, and it has march of giants. It should unite all of the humanity to tell the supremacists and those who threaten to exterminate the Palestinian people, stop with the genocide, stop with the Nazi fascism, stop with Nazi Zionism. There are many scenarios that are threatening. It is not the first time that the history of humanity puts us in a dilemma that is complex and diverse. So we should thank this historical time for the strength and the consciousness that public opinion has of the world, and the strength of consciousness even that the U.S. people have on Venezuela. Every day there are lies that are repeated, fake news and manipulations, and every day they premises the North launch threats. But I know that the people of the United States is paying attention, it is observing, and the people of the United States is very conscious that what is pretended to do against Venezuela is an aggression that is armed to impose a regime change, to impose a government subject to them, and to steal the petroleum, the gas, and the gold, and all of the national resources of a homeland that is rising its path with its own model. I am absolutely certain of that. First, that we are right, but to that we have to add strength, the strength of ideas, the strength of the people, the strength, the material strength, and the strength and the capacity of fight wherever we have to. Our brothers of the world must know that we love peace, we love diplomacy, we believe in the word of human beings, but we also believe in the necessity of defending the project, the life project, and the nation project that was founded by the libertarians. And we have prepared ourselves modestly together with the people. We have always faced all of the battles that we have had. We have done them together with the people. All of these wars that has different shapes, economical, electrical, political, psychological, we have always faced them with the truth and together with the people. And our people has prepared themselves with a doctrine that is very clear, and the people of the world must know it, a doctrine of defense, of integral defense of the nation. Venezuela has the right to peace, to sovereignty, to its existence, and there won't be anyone in this world who would take that away. And if it's necessary to go from the unarmed fighting form to the armed fighting ways, these people will do that for peace, for sovereignty, and for the right to exist. Colonialism, never again. Neo-colonialism, never again. Taking and supremacism, never again. I thank you, all of special guests, all of the delegations, and I wish an absolute success to the ending of the great international seminar. Thank you very much. Long live life, long live peace, and long live diplomacy as well.
Colonialism, never again. Those were the words of the president of Venezuela as we are looking at this ending of this conference of colonialism, neo-colonialism, some present times. We were looking at the president of Venezuela exchanging a book, also last comments with the prime minister of Saint Vicent and the Grenadines, Ralph Gonsalves, who also spoke in this occasion, a gathering that was set to exchange views on a critical topic, not only for the world, but in particular for the global south at this moment in history. We are looking at the cultural performances that are closing this event at this moment. We were saying neo-colonialism, colonialism, that was the center of discussion. We see this embrace, this regional embrace between Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves and also the President of Venezuela Nicolas Maduro. Colonialism to becoming a colony, never again. That was the strong message of President Nicolas Maduro as he went over history and a tale of independence, of that conquered independence from South American territory in particular, who have fought for the past 2 centuries to obtain its sovereignty, its true conquer of its territory, but continues to defend it time and time again. We were saying at the beginning that the idea of holding such a conference at a moment in time in which Venezuela is facing this aggressions, these threats from U.S. imperialism at this moment, that was the framework in which this conference took place. That is the framework in which these new debates on colonialism and neo-colonialism are taking place. So we were listening to the words of the President Nicolas Maduro, also to the words of the Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves of Saint Vicent and the Grenadines. Of course, we will have all the updates and all the information in Delcy English, so stay tuned.